fortittined. Evident signs that there is an evil person next to you. Stoic philosophy. Have you ever felt that something was off about someone? A feeling in your gut that warned you, but you couldn't quite explain why? The ancient Stoics understood something profound about human nature. They knew that some people consistently make choices that harm others, and they developed keen insights for recognizing these individuals before they could cause damage. Today we're exploring 14 signs that someone nearby might have harmful intentions, not based on superstition or judgment, but through the rational lens of Stoic philosophy. Before we begin, I want to clarify something important. The Stoics didn't view anyone as inherently evil. Instead, they saw harmful behavior as the result of ignorance, false beliefs, and poor character development. Understanding these patterns isn't about labeling others. It's about protecting your tranquility and making wiser decisions about who deserves your trust. If you're new here, this channel explores timeless wisdom for modern challenges. Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our weekly videos on practical philosophy. Now let's explore what the Stoics would identify as clear warning signs that someone might be harmful to your well-being. Sign 1. They consistently disrespect boundaries. The first sign the Stoics would highlight is a persistent disregard for boundaries. Marcus Aurelius wrote extensively about respecting the autonomy of others as a fundamental virtue. Someone who repeatedly ignores your clearly stated boundaries isn't merely being forgetful, they're demonstrating a fundamental disrespect for your autonomy. Notice how they might react when you establish a boundary. Do they apologize and adjust their behavior? Or do they dismiss your concern, make you feel guilty, or simply ignore the boundary entirely the next time? The Stoics would advise us to pay close attention to these patterns. As Epictetus taught, we cannot control others' actions, but we can control our response, including whether we continue to allow such people into our inner circle. Sign 2. They take pleasure in others' misfortune. The Stoics believed that a virtuous person naturally feels compassion toward others. Seneca wrote extensively about the importance of showing kindness, even to strangers. So when someone consistently demonstrates schadenfreude, taking pleasure in others' pain or misfortune, it reveals a concerning character flaw. So when someone consistently demonstrates schadenfreude, taking pleasure in others' pain or misfortune, it reveals a concerning character flaw. Pay attention to how they react to news of someone's downfall, especially someone they dislike or see as a rival. Do they express genuine concern, or do they subtly or not so subtly delight in it? This isn't about occasional moments of pettiness that we all experience. The Stoics understood human imperfection. Rather, it's about a consistent pattern that reveals a fundamental lack of concern for others' well-being. Sign 3. They manipulate through shame and guilt. The Stoics valued honest communication and despised manipulation. They would be particularly wary of those who consistently use shame and guilt to control others. Notice phrases like, "After all I've done for you," or, "If you really cared about me, you would." These are rarely part of healthy communication. They're tools to bypass your rational judgment and exploit your emotions. Epictetus emphasized that we should make decisions based on reason, not on emotional manipulation from others. When someone regularly makes you feel guilty for having reasonable needs or boundaries, the Stoics would see this as a significant red flag. Epictetus emphasized that we should make decisions based on reason, not on emotional manipulation from others. When someone regularly makes you feel guilty for having reasonable needs or boundaries, the Stoics would see this as a significant red flag. The manipulator's goal is to make you feel responsible for their happiness, creating an unbalanced relationship where your needs become secondary to theirs. Sign 4. They cannot admit wrongdoing. For the Stoics, the capacity for self-reflection was essential to a virtuous life. Marcus Aurelius constantly examined his own flaws and sought to correct them. So when someone shows a complete inability to acknowledge their mistakes or apologize, it reveals a dangerous rigidity of character. Watch for these patterns. Do they always have an excuse? Do they quickly turn conversations? around to focus on your flaws when confronted with their own? Do they rewrite history to make themselves appear faultless? The Stoics would warn us that someone who cannot admit wrongdoing cannot grow or improve. Their ego is too fragile to accept correction, making them potentially dangerous when given power or trust. Sign 5, they are two-faced. Consistency between words and actions was paramount to the Stoics. Seneca harshly criticized hypocrisy, especially in himself. Be wary of those who present completely different personas depending on who's watching. Notice how they treat service workers when things go wrong, how they speak about friends when they're not present, whether their behavior changes dramatically around those with power or status. The Stoics would argue that a person of genuine virtue maintains consistent principles, regardless of audience. Someone who is kind only when it benefits them is demonstrating what the Stoics would call false virtue, mere performance, rather than genuine character. Sign 6. They exploit vulnerabilities. The Stoics believe that a virtuous person helps others become stronger, not weaker. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "We are made for cooperation, like hands, like feet, like eyelids." Host. So when someone consistently exploits others' vulnerabilities rather than supporting their growth, it reveals a fundamental opposition to human flourishing. Pay attention to whether they seem to target people during moments of weakness, if they use private information you've shared against you later, whether they emphasize your insecurities under the guise of helping. The Stoics would particularly warn us about those who seem to collect vulnerabilities. Like weapons for future use, true virtue involves protecting, not exploiting, the vulnerable. Sign 7, they never take responsibility. The concept of personal responsibility was central to Stoic ethics. Epictetus taught that we must own the consequences of our choices. Someone who consistently blames others, circumstances, or the system for everything that goes wrong, while taking credit for successes, is displaying what the Stoics would consider a serious character flaw. Notice the language they use when things go wrong. Is it always, "they did this to me," rather than "I made a mistake"? Do they have a long list of people who have supposedly wronged them, with no acknowledgement of their own role? The Stoics would warn us that someone who cannot accept responsibility cannot be trusted with important matters, as they will inevitably blame others when things go wrong. Sign 8. They undermine your confidence. Stoicism emphasizes the development of inner strength and self-reliance. The Stoics would be particularly concerned about those who systematically undermine others' confidence. Watch for subtle patterns of undermining. Backhanded compliments, "You're smart," for someone without a degree. Minimizing achievements. Well, that was an easy project anyway. Creating dependency. I'm not sure you could handle that on your own. These patterns are particularly dangerous because they often operate below conscious awareness. You simply begin to feel less capable around certain people without understanding why. The Stoics would advise us to be vigilant about those who seem invested in keeping us small. A virtuous person, according to Stoic ethics, helps others develop their potential rather than diminishing it. Sign 9. They enjoy drama and conflict. The Stoics valued tranquility and harmony. While they didn't shy away from necessary conflict, they would be suspicious of those who seem to thrive on chaos and drama. Some people actually feed off emotional turbulence. They might spread gossip while claiming to hate it, subtly pit people against each other, escalate minor disagreements into major conflicts, seem energized rather than drained by arguments. The Stoics would warn us about such people because they fundamentally threaten our tranquility. While we cannot control their behavior, we can choose whether to engage with it. As Epictetus advised, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid with regard to external things. Sometimes the wisest response to drama seekers is to simply disengage. Sign 10. They use knowledge as a weapon. For the Stoics, knowledge was meant to improve character and help others. Marcus Aurelius warned against using education merely to impress or dominate. Host. Be wary of those who use their knowledge not to illuminate, but to belittle, embarrass, or control others. Host. Notice these patterns. They explain things in unnecessarily complex ways, They mock others for not knowing something. They withhold information that could help others succeed. They use phrases like, well, actually, to correct minor points rather than engage with main ideas. The Stoics would remind us that true wisdom manifests as kindness and clarity, not as intellectual dominance. Those who weaponize knowledge reveal that their learning hasn't improved their character, which was the whole point of philosophy for the Stoics. Sign 11, they cannot celebrate others' success. The Stoics believed in the fundamental connectedness of all humans. Seneca wrote that we should rejoice in others' good fortune as if it were our own. So when someone consistently responds to others' success with jealousy, dismissal, or thinly veiled resentment, they reveal a character that the Stoics would find concerning. Listen for, they just got lucky. Well, it wasn't that impressive. They had advantages you don't know about. Quickly changing the subject when someone shares good news. The Stoics would point out that a person who cannot celebrate others' success has tied their own well-being to external status rather than to virtue. Such a person will inevitably cause harm as they attempt to maintain their position at others' expense. Sign 12. They are cruel to those who cannot benefit them. For the Stoics, how we treat those who cannot benefit or harm us reveals our true character. Marcus Aurelius specifically advised himself to be kind to those from whom he expected nothing. One of the clearest signs of character is how someone treats people who can do nothing for them. Service workers, subordinates, or anyone perceived as having lower status. The Stoics would tell us that virtue isn't conditional. It doesn't depend on what we can gain from a situation. Someone who adjusts their kindness based on potential benefit is displaying what the Stoics would consider vice, not virtue. Pay particular attention to this sign, as it often reveals what other behaviors might be hiding beneath a charming exterior. Sign 13. They refuse to grow or change. The entire purpose of Stoic practice was self-improvement. For the Stoics, a life without growth was hardly a life at all. So when someone demonstrates a complete resistance to personal growth, it signals what the Stoics would consider a profound misunderstanding of life's purpose. Watch for these patterns. They've always been this way and always will be. They dismiss therapy or self-reflection as pointless. They blame their behavior on unchangeable personality traits. They see suggestions for growth as personal attacks. The Stoics would find this particularly troubling because they understood that humans are designed for continuous improvement. Someone who refuses to grow will continue harmful patterns indefinitely. Sign 14. They lack empathy for suffering. The final and perhaps most important sign concerns empathy. While Stoicism is sometimes misunderstood as promoting emotional detachment, the Stoics actually advocated deep compassion for others' suffering. When someone consistently shows indifference or even pleasure in response to others' pain, they reveal what the Stoics would consider a fundamental corruption of human nature. This lack of empathy might manifest as cruelty disguised as tough love, blaming victims for their circumstances, a consistent they deserved it attitude, being unable to comprehend why others are upset. The Stoics understood that virtue requires recognizing our shared humanity, someone who cannot or will not connect with others. Suffering poses a genuine danger, because they lack the internal constraint that prevents most humans from causing harm. What to do if you recognize these signs? So what would the Stoics advise if you recognize several of these signs in someone close to you? First, remember the principle of control. As Epictetus taught, you cannot change another person's character, but you can control the boundaries you establish, how much access they have to your life, whether you engage with their harmful behaviors. Second, the Stoics would caution against making this personal. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, this isn't pessimism, it's preparation. By recognizing that difficult people exist not to torment you personally, but because of their own flawed understanding, you can respond with clarity rather than emotional reactivity. Finally, the Stoics would advise compassion, not because harmful behavior is acceptable, but because they understood that harmful people are themselves, suffering from ignorance of what truly matters in life. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. The most stoic response to harmful people is not hatred but a recommitment to your own virtue.